Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for August 9th, 2026. And today, we're going to be taking a look at the MDR as chances are rising for tropical development. And depending on what happens, maybe there might be something that could impact the Caribbean, as we are watching two tropical waves out there right now as the Atlantic continues to heat up as we get closer and closer towards the peak of the hurricane season. So let's get right on with it, starting off with the tropical weather bulletin from the National Hurricane Center. And you can see there they are, two areas of interest right now. One of them is at a 20% chance, and this is the western tropical wave, which is already X marked here. So there's already a wave feature associated with this. And this one might be an interesting one, especially when it comes to potentially looking at impacts to the Caribbean here, which will be minor. And this wave definitely probably does not have as great of a chance at developing as this other wave here, which is further to the east. And this is up to a 50% chance of development right now. And I certainly do believe that the chances of development here will probably continue to go up over the next few days. And probably this upcoming week, we will be dealing with our next named storm in the MDR here. More than likely, it's just a matter of which wave develops, or maybe do both waves develop. We will see. But the Atlantic definitely continues to heat up. And the Eastern Pacific as well. We still are tracking three areas right now. One of them is at a high chance of development already, 90% in the next 7 days. And this is Invest 93C. So it's already been designated its own Invest. That's how you know we are seeing growing confidence with potential development here. And the reason why we have a lot of confidence is because of potential impacts that this might have to Hawaii down the line. And I know I've said that, when it comes to Hawaii, you always have to be very cautious in terms of, jumping on the gun, because with these Hawaii threats, it almost always seems like they don't pan out, but the models are still hinting at it. And regardless, this probably will be close enough to Hawaii, unless there's a ginormous model shift in the next few days, that we are going to see impacts regardless. And either way, it is definitely too close for comfort. So we are watching the Eastern Pacific here very closely, and of course the other areas as well. Another area here at a 60% chance of development in the next seven days, and there's also a low chance here, and maybe we will see development out of this too, although I guess a special emphasis on these two more western features, with the Pacific and the Atlantic both heating up right now. Here's a satellite shot of what is going on in the Atlantic. And of course, the main features we are watching here are in the MDR, as we continue to see very strong, aggressive tropical waves move off the coast of Africa. And by the way, yes, I decided to use a different satellite shot today. This is windy.com. And I must say that their graphics are pretty nice. And what I especially like about this website is you can scroll throughout the globe here. So we're in the Atlantic. You can see we have two tropical waves right now that we are monitoring. I think there's actually three here. Then you can move off or go back to the east here, scroll back to Africa, and you can see the tropical waves that have yet to come off the coast. And there seems to be at least two or three here that are probably loading up right now. So the African monsoon train continues to be active and probably will give us even more chances throughout the rest of the month here, to be completely honest with you. There's an interesting feature off the southeast coast. And then in the Pacific here, you could see quite a bit of activity here along the intertropical convergence zone. And I believe more than likely, I think this feature here is Invest 93C, which we'll be watching as it moves on off to the west-northwest. And this is probably the other area of interest that the National Hurricane Center is monitoring. Definitely a very beefy-looking trough here. Lots of convection producing, so you know that something is definitely brewing for sure. Looking at the tropical waves, though, across the Atlantic right now, you can see we continue to see them fire up here. The main tropical waves we are watching, though, are these two waves in the eastern Atlantic, with the first one a little bit further to the west here, and then the second one, I believe a tropical wave that was actually designated just today, and I think this is the actual wave that we need to watch for the 50% chance area that the National Hurricane Center has highlighted. And then there's another tropical wave here in the Caribbean. Hopefully that'll bring some rain. Let's go back to the satellite and see if there is some associated with this wave. And there's a little bit of action here, some scattered thunderstorm activity and showers across the eastern Caribbean. And hopefully, at least with one of these waves, we will actually be able to get some decent rain into the Caribbean, even if that has to mean in the form of hopefully just a weak tropical system here, because many of the Caribbean islands are very dry right now, suffering through drought conditions, thanks to El Nino, because the natural phenomenon of an El Nino obviously is very strong wind shear, lots of sinking air, especially in the Atlantic and especially in the Caribbean, and that kind of shears off and pretty much kills off every single tropical wave that makes it to the Caribbean. So it starves the basin of moisture, and obviously that is good for keeping a lid on hurricanes, but when it comes to droughts, we see another unfortunate, not so positive end to it. So hopefully they'll be able to get rain here in the coming days, and maybe as there are some shower and thunderstorm activity right now, maybe they'll get a little bit of rain, hopefully, today. Taking a look at the vorticity map, though, this is the map in which we like to look at when we're trying to see if there's anything trying to concentrate and develop when it comes to tropical cyclones. And in the Atlantic right now, you don't see that quite yet. You do see that there's a little bit of vorticity here off the southeast coast that's associated with our disturbance, which has also brought some rainfall to the southeast coast this weekend, but unlikely to develop. But we're watching out here in the MDR, where you definitely are noticing an increase in vorticity values. Nothing consolidating just yet, but you definitely know we have quite a bit of tropical wave energy out there. How are the atmospheric conditions looking like? Well, here's the wind shear map. And in the eastern Atlantic right now, wind shear is definitely low enough to at least permit for some tropical development. Obviously, the Caribbean, on the other hand, ripping with wind shear right now. Some values here as much as 50 knots, so definitely not very favorable in the Caribbean at all for tropical development. Again, which is why, these tropical waves really do fall apart when they enter the Caribbean, which in turn causes the entire Caribbean to not really get a lot of rainfall. And of course, will also kind of help keep a lid on anything that does try to make it to the Caribbean here, tropical storm-wise. But lower wind shear in the eastern Atlantic, and that is where we are monitoring our two waves right now. And there's also quite a bit of low wind shear as well throughout the general southwestern Atlantic and even in the Gulf too. But luckily, we are not monitoring anything there right now. But if there was anything in the Gulf or off the southeast coast that had a shot, and actually, our disturbance here off the southeast coast is kind of in somewhat low wind shear, something would probably be able to spin up, but more than likely we're not going to see that here happen over the next few days. So wind shear is not really as much of an issue, at least for areas that in which we are watching it for now. The biggest, factor, though, that would probably inhibit tropical development will be the dry air, because there's definitely an abundance of that right now, and you can see it quite abundantly here. A pretty big plume of Saharan air moving off of Africa right now very clearly, but there's also kind of another plume here that probably moved off of Africa a few days ago, and just in general, lots of Saharan air covering the central and northern MDR, but in the very least, it is more further to the north now, and naturally, as in August, we see the intertropical convergence zone here begin to shift to the north, and with that, the Saharan air dust plumes also shift to the north as well, and generally, that's why climatology naturally begins to favor more tropical development here in the eastern MDR. So our tropical waves here, as long as they stay at a somewhat low latitude and they don't make it so far north to where they just get pummeled and completely dried out by all the Saharan air here, we definitely will have a decent chance of development. So with that being said, let's take a look at the models today, starting off with the GFS for the 12Z run. And let's see what it shows here out in the MDR. And you can see over the next 2 or 3 days, we start off with small pieces of energy here very, southerly in latitude. So that is one plus. It's kind of, keeping its distance a little bit from all the dry air that we have to the north. And then gradually here over the next 2 to 3 days, we start seeing development. The GFS still developing the western AOI here, roughly around 3 days out as we get towards the mid part of next week. And then for our eastern tropical wave here, the GFS starts to show that that'll come together actually kind of around the same time. So it looks like, in the very least, that once we get towards around this upcoming Wednesday or Thursday, we should have at least one, maybe even two tropical systems here to track in the MDR, and maybe a couple of named storms as well. I'm thinking at, in the very least, one, definitely with this eastern feature here. And all of the models seem to agree on it. This tropical wave further to the east will probably, fare much better off in terms of developing. And taking a look at the wind shear, it is further off to the east, so wind shear is lower, especially in the eastern Atlantic versus, further to the west. We are much closer to the Caribbean, which obviously has very high wind shear right now. But the GFS, even with that, is still developing this western AOI here. Although it is kind of on a train of its own right now. But if we do see development of this western feature here, maybe those in the southern Caribbean islands, maybe Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, might have to watch for some potential impacts here. And more than likely, as you could see, if anything does develop, it probably will not be big. Because again, we will be having very, very strong wind shear. Dry air will more than likely get to it, and you could already see by the time this enters the Caribbean, this storm completely falls apart. So it will probably be nothing more than just showers and gusty winds with some thunderstorms. Not something that is overly crazy, but still impacts nonetheless. But then maybe we'll have to watch the second wave here, which will more than likely develop, and more than likely by the time it reaches the Caribbean be a tropical storm or a tropical entity in the very least. But that too probably runs into wind shear. And let's actually take a look at the upper level wind heights here, and you can see, yeah, there's definitely quite a bit of strong upper level winds here by the time it reaches the western Atlantic and the western MDR. And of course, one of the main reasons why is because we have a TUT, as in tropical upper tropospheric trough, a very common theme in an El Nino year, and obviously that imparts a lot of wind shear. So even with this tropical wave here, as it moves towards the west and gets closer to the Caribbean, it might probably also get sheared off quite a bit as well. Although initially, though, what tends to happen is, with tropical waves or tropical systems in general, if they are positioned well enough relative to the TUT, the TUT can actually enhance the outflow of systems a little bit. So maybe before then, we might get some intensification here in the MDR, and maybe end up with a decent tropical storm here. Not sure about a hurricane, but regardless, a named storm nonetheless is more than likely coming. But as this gets to the Caribbean too, this will more than likely begin to fade, and then into the western Atlantic, it'll probably just be a remnant of its former self. Although you can't, entirely count out, whatever does happen here. If we do get some of its remnants to remain left in the southwestern Atlantic, and conditions are favorable enough, maybe this will try to make a comeback and blossom out here, somewhere in the western Atlantic. And the models, especially yesterday, kind of hinted at that. But, actually, in terms of this thing actually surviving as it got to the western Atlantic, but it looks like the GFS is not showing that today. And it really just speaks to the overall, overpowering El Nino pattern with very strong wind shear, a wall of wind shear, literally, over the western Atlantic and near the Caribbean. So even when we do see development here in the MDR, and we're probably still going to get a decent amount of it, and we're clearly seeing something trying right now, it still gets sheared by the time it gets to the Caribbean nonetheless. But either way, development still looking pretty likely at this time. And taking a look at the ensembles too, they're also on the same boat. The European ensembles for the 0Z run, the 12Z is not out right now. Definitely showing quite a few members here, especially focusing on that eastern wave, which is more likely to develop. And interestingly enough, the European on the 0Z run did show some ensembles here entertaining the solution of this potentially, trying to blossom a little bit once this gets into the subtropics and away from the MDR, and of course away from the strong, force or wall of wind shear that obviously this will more than likely deal with once it gets to around just north of the islands, or maybe near the islands if the track ends up a little different. But with the western wave here, you could very clearly see if it does develop, maybe could be something interesting to watch for the Southern Caribbean, but it'll definitely get its face blown off by the time it gets to the Caribbean here, as wind shear will be very strong. So it's like you're basically going to be running into a buzzsaw, and you're going to get your head completely chopped off here. But development's still looking likely right now, nonetheless, over the next week, more than likely. What about the Google AI ensembles? Interestingly enough, they're not as enthused as the European is. And I kind of noticed a trend here with the AI ensembles. They tend to be good in the long range at developing, at, detecting signals for development around a week to sometimes even 2 weeks out. But once they get closer in time, they do downtrend. Or maybe the Google AI actually might be onto something, and maybe development chances are not as likely as possible. But more than likely, I think the AI model is kind of downtrending, erroneously, and we will still more than likely see development. But interestingly enough, though, only a few ensemble members, but they also do kind of hint somewhat at the signal here of something blossoming in the southwestern Atlantic, probably the remnants of the wave here in the MDR getting going. So maybe that might be a scenario that we have to look at in the long term. And then impacts to Bahamas or US or even Bermuda, way too far down the line to talk about it. Just let's focus on seeing whether or not we do get development in the MDR to occur, which is looking pretty likely right now. In the very least, I do think something will happen. And when you put all the models together, at least for the 12Z run, this is a very interesting graph here. This pretty much, it's what it is. It's a genesis probability given what all of the models show. And for the eastern wave out here, the total probability is 76%, while the western wave here is holding on at 41%. So both waves have a decent chance of development, but of course, we are focusing mainly on the eastern wave out here right now. So in the very least, we probably will, in my opinion, get potentially at least a named storm here in the MDR over the coming week. So I think we've established that now. Let's really quickly, though, take a look at the Central Pacific, because I do want to give you an update on Invest 93C, because this probably will be something we will have to look at more closely this upcoming week as well. And let me show you why here. The GFS beginning to develop 93C here. It looks like it takes about 1 or 2 days, but it starts to come together around hour 48, so probably once we get towards about Tuesday or Wednesday. And then it strengthens pretty decently here. Might compete for a little bit with another system that'll try to develop just to the north. And I think if you go to the National Hurricane Center Bulletin, that is that other AOI that's to the east of 93C. But then that fades off, and 93C takes off pretty decently here. And then you can see the GFS on today's run taking 93C just to the north of Hawaii. And obviously yesterday, they were taking the storm just over Hawaii. So once again, as I always say, the models do change here, especially when it comes to these Hawaii threats, but it is still very close to the island. So you're probably still going to get some wobbling here to occur over the next several days, because again, once this does get close to the Hawaiian Islands, it is going to be 7 days out. And as I always talk about, and I always say this, 7 days out when it comes to tropical tracking is literally an eternity, because so much can happen in just a matter of 7 days. So much shifts can happen in the models. Today this storm might be here on the GFS, but in reality, 7 days from now, it could be, somewhere well out here, or maybe even gone and, never developed at all. So a lot can happen here, but at least going by what the models have right now, we definitely have a storm here that will get a little too close for comfort for the Hawaiian Islands. So we will have to keep our eye out very closely here this upcoming week. And to that, we will get more information because coming out of the National Hurricane Center today, we will have recon for not just 93C, and that's a given, and that's something that I think a lot of people expected, but we could also potentially have recon for the AOI in the MDR too, especially the western one, since it will potentially be an impact to the Caribbean if we do see development out of it. So nice that we're going to get some recon, and obviously with that we're going to get more information and more data to input to the models, which obviously makes our forecasting more advanced and more accurate. So definitely looking forward to that, but I think we'll especially be monitoring 93C especially closely. But obviously you don't want to ignore our friends in the Caribbean as well. So in general, if you are in Hawaii or in the Caribbean or in general throughout the Atlantic and the Pacific, keep your eyes tuned to the tropics here over the next week, because things are definitely starting to heat up quite a bit, and we will be keeping an eye out on everything here very closely throughout the entire week ahead. With that being said, though, I'm going to wrap it up for today's discussion. That's all we can go over just about for now. Well, there is stuff happening in the Western Pacific too, but I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm going to end it off here, post this online, and hopefully you guys can go on and enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your weekend as well, while the weekend is still here. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll talk with you guys again for more tomorrow.